Hey, how you doing? This is Al
I'm Nick.
behind the camera, and we are the Regular Joe Foodie Show. We come at you with our videos and we're just regular Joes, regular guys, and we're sharing our food experiences, whether it's in a restaurant or actually cooking. Um, Today, we're going to be getting some ribs ready to do for the 4th of July tomorrow. So I'm going to kind of walk you through the process of how I get my ribs ready. One of the things that I do, I take off the sinew off the back of the rack. Not everybody does that. A lot of competition guys do it. I wasn't totally sure if I was sold on the idea, but once I started doing it, I could tell the difference. So whenever I do ribs now, I make sure I take the sinew off the back, and I'm just gonna walk you through it so that way if you wanna try it, you can try it. And then I'm gonna show you what I do to marinate. The marinate's really easy, and we'll get to that after we clean up the ribs. People will debate on whether to remove the excess fat off the ribs. I like taking the excess fat off. Again, I've talked about it. My wife is really particular when it comes to her food, and fat is one of the things that she just doesn't like, the excess fat. So I started doing that, but actually I'm glad I do. You'll see all the junk left over after we're done. People always ask me, what kind of ribs do I use? I just use regular pork spare ribs. And we'll go over the difference too with St. Louis style ribs. All St. Louis style ribs is just a rack of pork spare ribs, and they cut off the ends and square up the rack. You're actually going to end up paying more for St. Louis style ribs in the store than if you just buy a rack of spare ribs, and then either before you cook it or after you cook it, squaring them off, cutting that end off, and then serving it like a St. Louis style. I always smoke the ribs first, and then when I'm cutting the ribs, I cut that end piece off, the one with the cartilage and the meat, cut that off, cut my ribs, and normally when we serve, I'll ask people if they want ribs or they want tips, because some people like the tips, the cartilage piece, the meaty part, and some people would just throw it away or spit it out. So I like to ask, do you want ribs or tips or both? And then I give them a little bit of both. But I want to save from wasting food by them throwing away that cartilage filled tip. And it doesn't always have cartilage. Sometimes it's just a nice meaty piece. But people like to chew on the ribs. So let's get started here. My knife's a little bit dull, I think, but we're gonna open this up. And actually, I like a duller knife when I'm doing this, because I'm just gonna use it to pry that sinew up off the bones in the back of the rack. And they always do this. It looks real pretty up front. Doesn't look too fatty, too bad. But then you flip it over and you have this excess fat, and usually I'll pull that off. And then you have this white, it's hard to see, but you have this white piece behind, and we're just gonna pull all that excess off. You're not gonna get it all, but you're gonna get a lot. And so that's what we're gonna do. I've already cleaned the sink. Sink's been clean. And we're gonna take a dull knife. You can take maybe a fork and just kind of lift this sinew up, kind of cut it away. And then you can use an old dish towel, or I'll use a paper towel and grab that and then start pulling away. And usually it'll start pulling off pretty easy. That piece kind of cut away, so and you're seeing that this piece is kind of pulling away. But then we run into this meat flap right here, and we want to save that meat, so we'll just kind of trim it. And I've never had complaints. People don't normally know how I do my ribs as far as prep, and I've never had complaints. People saying it didn't have flavor, where's all the extra fat. Never had that happen. So, and you're not just trying to remove the sinew from the bones, you're trying to get the whole thing. See, we probably still got some here on this meat. This piece has been really difficult. We'll see how we do with the next rack. The problem with taking the sinew off the back of that meat flap, is a lot of times that's what's holding that little flap in place. And when you pull that off, you're gonna lose that meat flap and you'll have to cook it separately. I like leaving it on. And it might seem like it's a lot of work, but to me, it's worth taking all this stuff off. You see there's a little meat on there. That doesn't always happen, but to me it's worth it. I usually don't mess with the front too much unless there's just a big old fat chunk. And there was some here. There's a little bit here, but you're not gonna get it all. And it's not as bad. Usually as it cooks, it's gonna render out. And it's not much, it's not like that sinew piece. That sinew piece, once it cooks, is gonna get hard. You can have this kind of hard yellow piece. Now, I'm pretty much done. I'm gonna fold it in half, and then I'll stick it in a 2-gallon Ziploc bag. I'll stick it in a 2-gallon Ziploc bag and then marinate it. And so, and then we'll go over the marinade once I'm done cleaning up these racks, and we'll be right back. All right, we're gonna start on the second rack. The first rack didn't have a lot of success getting that sinew off the back of the bones, but we got a lot of the fat off. So I'm gonna take off a lot of this excess fat. Since the ribs are marbled with fat anyway, you're not gonna lose flavor. And then if you marinate your meat or put a dry rub, it's not like you're gonna lose flavor. I always smoke my meat, so you're gonna get some nice smoke flavor. I usually use mesquite or oak. I like both. Mesquite's usually my go-to because I can get lump charcoal at one of our restaurant type stores, bulk stores, at a pretty good price. And it's mesquite. Never had a problem with it. I think it's Far West lump charcoal, and I've really enjoyed it. I do get some oak from up in our mountains here, our Sierra Nevada mountains. I have a friend up there, gets me some oak off his property, and it gives it a nice flavor. And one of my sayings when people ask me about learning to barbecue, I always say if you want to learn to barbecue, you got to be willing to ruin some meat. Not that you want to ruin some meat, but you have to be willing to try. And sometimes trying means failing, but as long as you learn from it and keep going, it's not a true failure. You're learning. With this one, you can see that sinew is starting to come off a lot easier. Again, it just depends on the rack. Again, with cooking, it's not always going to be work perfect. It's not a by the book thing that everything turns out perfect every time. You just have to adjust. And you got that piece of sinew right there. Some of the fat came off the back, and it doesn't look like we have to clean up too much more off the back of the rack. There is the piece of sinew on the back of this meat flap, but that's really hard to get this whole piece off. And again, sometimes it affects whether that meat stays on there or not. So I'll probably leave most of that, just clean off a little bit of the fat. Again, I'm not a culinary student. I'm a student of the art of barbecue, learning from other people, watching videos, reading books, doing whatever I can to make my food a good experience for the people that are eating it. And that's probably as much as I'm gonna do, because a lot of the fat, like I said, is just marbled in there. You're not gonna get it all, and you don't want to get it all. You want that flavor, but the excess pieces, those big excess pieces are not really appetizing. So we're gonna bag that up, but I want you to take a look at all this is from 2 racks, and all the fat. There's a tiny bit of meat, but not much. It's not like you lost a lot of meat, but all this fat and sinew and stuff, this is from 2 racks of ribs. And yeah, if you're doing, I think I've done like maybe 6 racks Probably about 6 racks I smoked at a time, maybe 8, and I've cleaned all the sinew off. Again, just because if I'm going to serve it to my family, I want to treat my guests just like family. And so I can understand if you're doing 10, 20 racks, you may not want to do this all. It's time consuming. Bending over the sink and getting it all clean could be kind of trying on your back, but it just depends how far you want to go with your food. So we're gonna bag this up now, and then I'm gonna show you how I do my marinade. It's a real simple marinade, and we'll take a look at it in just a moment and see what you think. All right, now we got our ribs cleaned up, took the sinew off the back, we got the excess fat off, and so now I'm just gonna show you a simple marinade. I usually use this for just about everything: tri-tip, ribs. When I'm getting ready to do pulled pork, I'll marinate my pork shoulder in it. And all it is equal parts of soy sauce and apple juice. The soy sauce, the salt in the soy sauce is going to tenderize your meat, going to start breaking it down so it's not, so it's nice and tender. And then the apple juice is going to give it a sweetness. Now, if you want it a little bit more sweet, I mean, you can play with this as much as you want. I do equal parts, usually a cup and a cup. But if you want it a little sweeter, you add just a little bit more, maybe 1.5 cups of apple juice, a little bit more subtle, cut back on the apple juice, and then a little bit more of the soy sauce. I usually use equal parts, so I'm gonna do a cup of soy sauce, and if you can go over a little bit, it's no big deal. Pour that in there, and then a cup of apple juice. I like the Martinelli's apple juice. I think it's one of the pricier ones out there, but I think it's flavor-wise. I love to drink it. I love to use it. Again, cooking with love. If I enjoy drinking that, why not use it for my marinade? Why not use it for my ribs? And you could do 2 cups. You could do whatever you want. And then I'm just gonna make sure I seal the Ziploc bag up. And what I'll do is, because I have the rack flipped, I'll let it go so long on one side, and then I'll flip it over. Usually before we go to bed for the evening, I'll flip it over. You don't want to marinate your meat too long. And you might have found this out. If you marinate it too long, the salt starts breaking up the meat, the tissue, and you end up with mushy meat. Your roast, your tri-tip, your ribs will have a mushy consistency. Realistically, you only need maybe 4 hours, 4 to 6 hours. I usually do it overnight. I do it the evening before, and then I'm gonna get up early and smoke the meat. So usually about 8 hours to 10 hours, but usually about halfway through or before we go to bed, depending on what time we go to bed. I like to flip it, and that way both sides get marinated equally. I'm gonna do something a little different. My wife's actually come up with a lot of the marinades that we use, but again, I'm gonna use the soy sauce. So I'm gonna go with 1 cup of soy sauce because I want that salt. It acts just like if you're brining your meat, you're brining your chicken, your meat, almost like a brine. The salt is going to retain moisture, break down your meat. And then I'm gonna use equal parts of barbecue sauce. And so this is For His Glory original barbecue sauce. This is the sauce that I make, For His Glory barbecue. And I'm gonna use the For His Glory original. It got a little bit of a bite, but not too bad. And because not everybody likes heat. I like heat, but not everybody likes heat. So I'm gonna use equal parts. I'll do a cup of barbecue sauce, and then the soy sauce. The soy sauce is gonna, and actually, to be honest, I'm gonna add just a little bit more soy sauce just to kind of rinse out this cup. Kind of get all that goodness out of there, barbecue sauce goodness out of there. And then I'm gonna seal it up, lay it flat, and just like the other one, we'll flip it before we go to bed. Sometimes I wake up and do it halfway through, but usually I'll do it before we go to bed. If I forget, I'll wake up in the middle of the night and flip it. And then just kind of even out your rack, so that way the whole bottom of the rack is getting the marinate. And actually what I'm going to do is I want to flip this over once, just because I put that the way I poured the barbecue sauce in. If you want, before you dump it in, if you got a two cup or a larger measuring cup, you can put your barbecue sauce and soy sauce in there, mix it up so you get a nice good mix, and then pour it in. It's up to you. Use your favorite barbecue sauce. It doesn't have to be Forest Glory, especially because you can't get it in stores right now. So my friends and family, a lot of times, you know, they'll order some from me. I'll make it up. Use your favorite barbecue sauce and some soy sauce, apple juice and soy sauce. You don't have to buy the Martinelli's. You can buy the 99-cent or whatever you want. I usually like to go with the adage that you get what you pay for, and so because I like to drink it, because I think it has a good flavor, I like to use that. But again, depending on what you're doing, how many tri-tips you're marinating, how many extra ribs you're marinating, you may not want to spend that much money, and you might want to get the 99-cent apple juice. It's up to you. Have fun with it, and hopefully you get something out of this. Tomorrow when we smoke the tri-tips, we will post that video as well. So again, thank you. If you enjoyed what you saw, what you learned, please leave us a comment down in the comment section. If you had a different experience with the sinew or with marinades, please leave us a comment. You have any suggestions of marinade that you'd like us to try? Leave it down in the comment section so we can try it out and come back and let you know what we thought. Again, have fun with the food. This is Al.
And Nick.
Let's try that again. We're going to edit that part. Okay. This is Al.
This is Nick.
From the Regular Joe Foodie Show. Just sharing our love for food. We do food reviews. We're going to do little tips like this. And we hope to get with some regular Joes, some regular people, and have them just whip up their favorite recipe and bring that to you as well. Until next time, God bless. We'll see you later. Bye.